Hello wonderful human beings, Sheldon Evans here, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the dumbest purchases that I've made in my 20s. I'm still in my 20s, so I could still make more mistakes. I could make more mistakes throughout the rest of my life. But today we're going to be talking about the ones that I've made and how I've learned from them and how you guys can maybe learn from them. I've been fortunate enough that the mistakes that I've made haven't really left me in some sort of dire financial situation. I've been able to recover from them and they haven't really had a significant impact on my life. And that is because I'm in sort of a unique financial situation where I make my own money, I'm able to spend it, and losing it doesn't really affect me too much. So hopefully you guys can learn something from this and that you don't make the same mistakes as me. So starting off with the first financial mistake that I made, and that is by buying a BMW. The reason I'm starting with this is that it's both the dumbest and one of my favorite and best purchases I've ever made. Those two things don't really correlate and don't really go well together, so let me explain. All through growing up, one of my biggest goals was to own an expensive, fast car. And I think that comes from growing up with a family that didn't really have a lot of money, and we didn't really ever have expensive things or expensive cars or big houses. I grew up in a pretty low to middle income family, which if I think about it now is actually really good because it's made me want to work harder and really achieve my goals in life. I really haven't been given anything and spoiled. I think if I didn't have that, I would be a spoiled brat. I did grow up with a lot of rich kids as friends, and just to see how they've turned out now, not that I'm hating on them at all, it's just they don't really have as much motivation because they've had everything handed to them. So if you are growing up or come from a wealthy family, just keep that in the back of your mind that you need to work hard in life. And you really need to rely on yourself if you want to get anywhere in life. So the reason that I'm starting with this and saying that it's both the dumbest and the best decision that I've ever made is obviously because it was a goal of mine, but also because it left me with a sense of satisfaction. When I was driving my old car, I used to have a small, slow, compact, little Ford Fiesta, and sitting behind the wheel of that car would constantly motivate me to get a nicer car and to work harder. So I would sit behind the steering wheel, I would visualize myself in a nicer car, visualize myself putting my foot down on the accelerator and really going faster and feeling the G-force. I was thinking about these things all the time when I was sitting in my older car. So I worked hard and I saved up enough money to buy a BMW cash. Now this is a little bit of a better decision than buying a car on finance or taking out a loan to buy one, because you end up paying a lot of money that you wouldn't have needed to pay otherwise in interest. But if you work it out over the lifetime of owning that car, you can end up paying a few extra $1,000s that you would have otherwise have saved if you just saved up in the first place and then bought the car cash. But I did end up buying the car cash and it was amazing and I absolutely loved it. As soon as I got the car, I spent every single day driving as much as I can, but I soon realized that this car actually works out to be a lot more expensive in the long run than I would have realized before. And that is because I'm quite young, I'm under 25, so my insurance is a lot higher than other people's insurance, especially on an expensive car and a fast car. So I was paying around $500 a month just on insurance on my car. I spent a lot of money on fuel because it's a fast car, so it uses a lot more fuel than most other cars. And just general upkeep got very expensive very quickly. Every time I needed to service the vehicle, it was costing me more and more money. Also, after 2 years of owning my car, one night I went out to dinner with some friends and I just parked my car on the side of the street somewhere. We went to dinner, and when I came back later on in the evening, I noticed someone had sideswiped the entire side of my car and hadn't left a note. I had no idea who did it. There were no cameras. So I was left with a vehicle that needed a ton of repairs, and because it's an expensive car, those repairs were not cheap either. So in the end, the car cost me a lot more than I thought it would in the beginning, and I really didn't get much out of it besides having a little bit more fun driving and being able to relax a little bit more behind the wheel. I've now sold that car and I don't own a car at all anymore, which is amazing. I just Uber everywhere. If I need to go somewhere, I just call up an Uber. I've got extra time to sit in the back of the car, get some emails done, make calls, listen to music. I can really relax and be driven around everywhere, which is amazing. And the great thing about this as well is that I travel a lot. So when I'm not using my car, it's basically just sitting around, gathering dust, losing value, and I'm paying insurance on it. So not having a car has been an absolutely amazing thing, and I don't have to worry about this huge asset that is just depreciating day by day. The second mistake that I've made, and that I seem to continue to make, is by making last minute travel plans. I absolutely hate planning and I'm very bad at it. So basically every single day of my life is a spontaneous adventure. So I end up making very last minute travel plans and booking flight tickets at the very last minute, which sounds like a lot of fun until you realize how much money you've been wasting booking flights on the same day or a day before instead of weeks or months in advance. Sometimes flight ticket can be double or even triple the price if you're booking them last minute. I live in Cape Town, South Africa, and I fly home to Johannesburg every now and again to visit my family and my friends, but I never really plan in advance. So if I decide to do it, I sort of do it last minute and either fly the same evening or I book my ticket the day before, and it ends up costing me a lot more money than it should. A return flight is usually around $80, but my most recent flight was $450 because I booked it on the same day and I really wanted to go home. So I ended up booking it and it just cost me more money than it should. So my advice to you and to myself is to just plan in advance. Start getting better at planning, writing down what you want to be doing, where you want to be throughout the year so that you can save yourself a lot of money. I think it just comes down to the fact that I'm a master procrastinator. I leave things to the last minute. Absolutely everything in my life is left until the last minute. For example, when I sold my car, I still had speeding and traffic fines on it, which weren't excessive. They're usually only 1 or 2 miles over the limit, which isn't much. So I had to pay those off before I could sell the car. But the thing is, in South Africa, I'm not sure how it works in the rest of the world, but for the first 32 days of receiving that fine, the fine is half price. So if you pay it in that time, you pay a certain amount, but then over time, as you let that fine go up, it doubles in price and then gets more and more expensive, and then you get a court summons and you have to show up at court and plead your case. It becomes this long, drawn-out process that could easily be avoided if I just paid it up front. So pay your fines, don't procrastinate, and just plan things in advance. But before we move on to the next way that I waste my money, why don't we talk about something that I'm glad that I spend my money on? And that is Squarespace. You've probably heard me mention them on this channel before, and that's because I actually use their service. I built my whole website on Squarespace and it only took me a couple minutes. They've got tons of templates to choose from, so select one, customize it, and build away. You can use it to blog, to sell products, or showcase your work. If you visit this link or the one in the description, you can get 10% off your first order with the code Sheldon. So whether you need a domain name, a website, or an online store, create that bad boy with Squarespace. Now let's get back to talking about how I waste my money. Number 3 is probably the biggest purchasing mistake that I've made, and that is by renting an incredibly expensive apartment when I did not need it. Now, this is going to sound insane, but this is what happened. I only stayed in this apartment for 3 months, but it was $5,000 a month. So let me explain how this happened and why I paid so much for an apartment. So 1.5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to move to Cape Town, South Africa and live closer to the ocean, make some new friends, and just really transplant myself to a new city and see how it went. Usually I travel on short bursts and spend a few days in a new city, but this time I wanted to take my whole life up and move it to a new city and see how well I coped. So I had no idea what I should pay for an apartment in Cape Town, so what I did was I just browsed through Airbnb. This is basically always how I find a place to stay in a new city or a new country. I just browse through Airbnb because I don't like signing a lease for an extended period of time because I'm not sure what happens in that year, and I like to be spontaneous and be able to move whenever I want. So by entering into a lease agreement, I feel claustrophobic and locked in, and it's just not the sort of lifestyle that I like living. So I browsed through Airbnb and I came across this apartment that was on a 70% discount. Yes, 70%. Now that sounds like an insane discount until you realize what I actually paid for this apartment. I came across this penthouse apartment that was 3 bedrooms, absolutely beautiful inside and out, with incredible panoramic views of Cape Town's harbour and Table Mountain. And I thought to myself, this is where I want to live. It's amazing. It's done. It's on a crazy discount. Until I realized how much it cost. The original price of this apartment was $13,000 or $14,000 a month, but it was on discount to around $5,000 a month because of this insane discount, because I would be the first person ever to rent this apartment on Airbnb. So the owner had set up some sort of crazy discount to try and get new people to stay in the apartment and then leave reviews, I guess. So I thought to myself, I'll just rent it for 1 month, and when I move to Cape Town, I can be there and I can scout out other apartments and see if there's anything else that I find that is cheaper and that I like a lot more. So I had a friend at the time who really wanted to move down to Cape Town as well, so I hit him up and asked him if he wanted to move with me. He was down and we were going to split the rent. So about a week later, we packed all our things up and we moved to Cape Town, and I arrived at this apartment and it was absolutely beautiful. It was amazing. I loved it so much. The views were insane, and I tried to convince myself that it was worth it. And after a few days of staying there, I realized that the discount would still apply to the following month's rent if I booked those months in advance. So impulsive Sheldon decided to just open up the Airbnb app and book 3 months flat out for $15,000. I have no idea why I did this. Now that I think back on it, I realize how much money I spent and how much I could have saved and used that on other things. But at the time, I was just having such a good time. Cape Town's such a beautiful city. I loved it so much. I just wanted to stay there forever, and I made this stupid impulsive decision. But again, as I've said, I do own my own business and I make my own money. So I've made these bad decisions, but I've been able to recover from them. They haven't really affected my life. But now that I think about it, I wish that I didn't do that. I spent the next 3 months in Cape Town absolutely loving life and just enjoying my time, because I didn't really have to worry about rent because I paid it up front. So you don't really have a bill that is looming over your head and that you have to pay each month, because I'd paid 3 months in advance. So I sort of just carried on with life and carried on living just as I was before. But when it came to the end of my lease, I decided to look for a place that was more affordable, and I ended up moving in with some roommates, which was amazing and probably one of the better decisions that I've made. Moving to a new city and then staying with roommates is a great idea. Usually those people know the city quite well. You can integrate into their friend group, you can meet new people a lot easier, and generally it's just a happier, nicer vibe to stay with people who know the city that you're moving into. So if you're moving somewhere new, try and find a place that's cheap, move in with roommates, make some new friends, and save yourself some money. Financial mistake number 4 is buying camera gear and equipment that I just do not need. I used to have what is known as GAS, or gear acquisition syndrome, and that is just buying expensive camera gear when you don't need it. I'm a photographer, and if you're not a professional photographer or you're just a hobbyist, photography can get expensive very, very quickly. It's one of the most expensive hobbies, especially with buying new lenses and cameras. They can be thousands of dollars with each purchase. Every time I wanted a new piece of gear, I would buy it and it would set me back thousands of dollars, when in actual fact, everything that I needed was what I had at the time. I've since gotten over this syndrome. I still have some of the lenses that I purchased back then that I don't use at all. They just sit on my shelf. I have a drone that I bought when drones were a big thing and just coming out. I bought it impulsively. I loved it. It was a lot of fun while I had it. I crashed it into the side of my previously mentioned car. It wasn't my fault. It was landing. It was in the landing mode. I don't know if it got confused by the reflections on the side of the silver car, but it was landing, and all of a sudden it decided to fly left into the side of my car door, which again cost me a lot of money, and the drone is still sitting on my shelf with a broken camera. These days, all I use and all I need is the camera that I'm using to shoot this with right now, which is the Sony a7 III and a Tamron 28-75 lens. This setup is perfect for everything. I use it for photo, I use it for video. I don't have to carry heavy gear around with me in my backpack, adding extra weight to my travels. But I think I needed to purchase that gear and use it and realize that I don't need it in order for me to understand that I don't really need it. So what I recommend doing, even if you can't relate as a photographer, maybe buying an expensive car, just as I spoke about before, I'd recommend renting an expensive car, having some fun with it, and then going back to your daily driver and just getting to work and using it to commute. And when you want to have some fun, just rent an expensive car for the day. It's a lot more fun. You'll appreciate it a lot more. The satisfaction level will be much higher because you'll have that fun, and then you won't have to worry about the long-term financial stress that it will leave on your wallet. And this applies for every other hobby as well that gets really expensive really quickly. Yes, it can be your hobby, but don't let it become an obsession that really impacts your financial situation. And finally, number 5 is spending way too much money on takeout. I realize how stupid this is now that I've been doing it, but I spend so much money every single day just ordering food off of Uber Eats or going out to eat at a restaurant every single night. And it adds up very, very quickly. I think the sad thing about this is that I could be learning a new skill by teaching myself how to cook and going out and buying the ingredients and then coming home to cook, and then being able to invite some friends over and cook for them. By eating out 2 or 3 times every single day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe having a coffee along the way as well, it adds up very, very quickly, and this money basically wasted because it gives me a few seconds of satisfaction while I'm eating that food, and then it's gone forever. So instead, I'm gonna learn how to cook, acquire a new skill, and then I can cook for other people, save myself money, and eat a lot healthier, because a lot of the time when I'm eating out, I'm eating incredibly unhealthy food because it is takeout. And that's it, 5 of the dumbest mistakes and purchases that I've made in my 20s. Maybe you guys have made the same mistakes, maybe you can learn from this, maybe you can't. Comment down below if you've made any of the same mistakes or if you've made your own mistakes, and maybe we can chat about it and wallow in this pit of sadness and hopefully learn from our bad decisions. If you guys liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this in the future, and as always, I shall see you in the next video. Cheers.